He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
So what can the Congress do about it is the next question.
Well, the next question is very simple. And that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privileged resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass it.
President Trump say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan for what comes next, is reckless. Now, I was in the skiff on 3 different occasions, as recently as December, and I asked the administration, I asked them, are you pursuing regime change? Are you intent on taking military action in Venezuela, Venezuelan territory? And they assured me that they were not pursuing those things. Clearly, they're not being straight with the American people. So I've been talking to so many members of my caucus today. Everybody is very, very just totally troubled, worried about how dangerous this is. Let me lay out just a few of the actions that have already been taken to hold the Trump administration accountable. First, Leader Jeffries and I called on the Trump administration to brief the Gang of Eight immediately, followed shortly by a briefing for the entire Congress in the beginning of next week.
Take a good look at your screen. What you're seeing isn't just a politician. It's a sitting senator who has spent the last decade perfecting the art of the flip-flop. We are witnessing a total betrayal of the American interest, plain and simple. They think you aren't paying attention, but the records don't lie, and neither does the footage. It's all right here, etched in stone, showing a man who changes his principles as often as he changes his suits. It's a disgrace, and it's time we called it what it is. Let's go back to 2020. Remember that? The world was a mess, but the theater in Washington? That stayed exactly the same. You had then Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer stepping up to the microphones, his voice dripping with that practiced, calculated disdain he loves so much. He wasn't just talking to reporters, he was mocking us. He laughed at the Trump administration's efforts to bring some kind of stability to a collapsing Venezuela. Back then, Schumer's big gripe wasn't that the president was doing too much, it was that he wasn't doing nearly enough. He looked at the cameras and basically called the commander-in-chief a coward. He claimed the Maduro regime was only getting stronger because the Republicans weren't pushing hard enough. He was demanding fire and brimstone. He wanted results, and he was more than happy to use the literal starvation of the Venezuelan people as a political stick to beat his rivals with. If you dig through the archives, you see a man who is practically begging for regime change. He didn't care about legislative hurdles back then. Those are just things he's pretending are sacred now. It was a total performance, a masterclass in grandstanding, designed to make the president look weak on the world stage, while he secretly hoped for the very chaos he now says he's afraid of. Now, fast forward to today. The script hasn't just been flipped, it's been shredded. We're finally seeing the hollow, rotten core of the DC establishment. President Trump is back. He's got a fresh mandate from the voters, and he's moving to finally take out the Maduro threat and fix the mess on our southern border. So, where's the senator now? Is he cheering for the bold action he was screaming for just a few years ago? Don't hold your breath. Instead, he scurried away to hide behind the War Powers Act. The same guy who used to demand strength is now begging for delays, for more committees, and for the kind of endless red tape that keeps Congress paralyzed while the world burns. He says he's troubled and worried about one-sided actions. You know, the exact same actions he said were missing when it suited his agenda. Let's be real. This isn't about the law. It's about power. He wants to make sure no victory is won, no matter how much it helps the hemisphere, if it happens under a flag he refuses to salute. This jump from hawk to dove didn't happen because he had a change of heart. It happened because the political winds changed. This hypocrisy isn't a bug in his system. It's the whole plan. It's a desperate attempt to kill a successful foreign policy just because it proves the previous administration was right all along. While the hallways of the Senate are echoing with this partisan bickering, look at the reality on the ground in Caracas. It's a nightmare. For years, Maduro's regime has been a rot spreading across the continent. They're exporting misery, fueling the chaos at our border, and shaking hands with every enemy America has. But the moment the president moves to actually stop the bleeding and end the suffering, he hits a wall of DC interference. You have to ask yourself, why would a United States senator choose to give political cover to a socialist dictator? The answer is as ugly as you'd expect. It's the radicalization of the modern left. They'd honestly rather see a tyrant stay in power than see a patriot succeed. By pulling the war powers trigger now, Schumer isn't defending the Constitution. He's protecting a thug. Every single day that the opposition in DC stalls, that regime gets to tighten its grip just a little bit more. American interests are being shoved to the side while the body count under Maduro keeps climbing. The numbers are horrifying, and the failure of the old wait-and-see plan is something nobody can deny. But the establishment? They prefer the status quo of tragedy over the risk of a Trump victory. They're playing a dangerous game with human lives just to keep a base happy that thinks their own president is a bigger enemy than a foreign despot. This isn't just some local argument. The whole world is watching this play out, and believe me, our enemies are feeling pretty good right now. When the Senate Minority Leader tells the world that the American government is at its own throat, he's basically handing a green light to the guys in Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran. They see the infighting. They see how the War Powers Act is being turned into a political weapon. They realize that the American giant is being tripped by its own shoelaces. The 2020 version of Schumer seemed to understand that a strong America is the only way to get respect. But the 2026 version, he seems obsessed with trashing that reputation just to get a headline. This total failure to stand together is what creates global chaos. It tells every two-bit dictator that they can outlast an American president if they just wait for the next partisan flip-flop. The cost of this double talk is measured in more than just words. It's measured in the loss of American influence. If the commander-in-chief can't strike at the root of the problem, that problem is going to grow until it's standing on our own front porch. We're watching a historic betrayal, a moment where DC stopped caring about the border and started helping the very forces we're supposed to be fighting. The establishment thinks you're blind. They're betting on it. But out in the heartland, people are seeing right through these games. Voters haven't forgotten the 2020 speeches. They remember the promises to hold thugs accountable. And they see this current obstruction for exactly what it is. Look at social media. It's on fire with the proof. Regular people are doing the actual journalism that the mainstream media is too scared to touch. They're pulling up the old tapes, showing the contradictions, and they're demanding accountability. That war powers excuse, it's being seen as a paper-thin shield for a partisan hit job. When people look at the border, when they look at their bank accounts, and when they see the mess overseas, they see a straight line leading back to the permanent Washington class that puts their own jobs above your safety. The anger is boiling over, and it's not just coming from the right. Even moderate voices are starting to ask why the goalposts keep moving. The trust is gone, and we're not getting it back as long as the Senate keeps putting winning over the well-being of the Republic. The lights are finally coming on, and they're showing us just how deep the hypocrisy goes. Let's look at the actual legal maneuvers they're using to kill this operation. The War Powers Act was meant to stop long, pointless, undeclared wars, not to give a minority party a veto button just because they don't like the president's foreign policy. By twisting the law like this, the senator is trying to rewrite how our government works in real time. They're trying to train you to accept a weak president, but only when that president is a threat to their power. They love to talk about norms and traditions, but they'll blow up every norm we have the second it helps their agenda. If a Democrat were in the Oval Office taking down a regime, the senator would be the first one calling it a victory for democracy. But because it's Donald Trump, now it's a crisis of authority. This refusal to apply the law equally to everyone is how institutions die. We're at a point where they're changing the rules in the middle of the game, and the only ones losing are the American people who just want their leaders to have a shred of integrity. These changes won't just go away. They're going to haunt this nation for decades, long after these current political battles have been forgotten. At the end of the day, you can't kill the truth. You can't hide it under a pile of press releases or bury it in a bunch of legal talk. The facts are right there. Chuck Schumer wanted Maduro gone when he could use it as a weapon against Trump. And now he wants Maduro to stay so he can do the same thing. It's the kind of circular logic that only a career politician could ever be comfortable with. But for the rest of us, for the patriots who actually want a safe neighborhood and for the families waiting for the end of a killer regime, the choice isn't hard. We have to demand a foreign policy that's based on actual principles, not on whatever a Senate office feels like doing that week. The president is doing what he promised. He's protecting the border and taking out a threat that's been hanging over us for way too long. The real question isn't what the dictator is going to do next. It's whether our own leaders will even let America lead. The curtain is up and the reality of the swamp is on full display. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never forget who stood up for this country and who stood up for the status quo.